Although it may be hard to believe, I suggest there is one common emotional obstacle that's standing between both you and greater presence with your loved ones and greater performance in your business. One common emotional obstacle, and I'll walk you through what that is in this video. Now, to contextualize this idea, consider that you are probably not going to either receive or achieve more than you could tolerate losing. So, what I suggest is that until you work through the unresolved grief you've been carrying around for years and years and years, there's going to be a hard limit on how close you can get to your loved ones and how much you can achieve in your business. Now, let's see if we can make some sense of this. Grief is the pain of loss. It's the emotional experience that signals we have lost something of value. And Lord knows, all of us have suffered tremendous amounts of loss in our lives. Some of us are honest with ourselves about that fact. Others will defend against it by any means necessary. And look, it's not their fault if you find that you have defended against grief, pushing it aside, shoving it down, trying to power through it. You're a product of culture. Grief tends to take us inward and downward. It slows us. Our culture tends to be upward and outward and fast. So grief is anathema to the culture at large. What that means is many of us have never learned what to do with grief, how to be with grief. We can't tolerate it, and therefore we can't work with it. And what I'll suggest is that until you have honestly come to terms with the pain of everything you have lost thus far in life, it's very unlikely that you're going to achieve much more or receive much more, because anything more offers the opportunity for further loss. And that would be very painful. If you were carrying around a great burden of unresolved pain and you add more pain to it, well, that's probably going to be too much to bear. Hence, if you are dealing with unresolved grief, you're going to be operating primarily in a state of loss aversion. You are going to be doing everything in your power, consciously or not, to avoid bad outcomes. You're not going to get any closer with your loved ones because any closeness lost is going to be all the more painful. You're not going to achieve anything more in your business because any greater performance lost is going to be all the more painful. So I'll suggest to you that one of the most effective things you could do for yourself if you want to have a more satisfying life is come to terms with the real pain of all that you've suffered thus far. Now, look, I know that's not a tempting proposition. Hence, we've got to kind of dangle the carrot of greater closeness with your loved ones, greater performance in your business. And yes, those things will almost certainly occur. The truth of the matter, though, is that coming to terms with your grief is how you do right by your soul. Uh, it doesn't get any clearer than that. Grief is incredibly painful. It's incredibly difficult for us to work with. And yet, it's how we do right by what's most essential in us. Grief asks for remembrance. It asks for acknowledgement. It asks that we honor the dead, so to speak. Now, whether that's the literal death of a loved one, whether that is the failure of a business, whether that's the breakdown of a marriage or a relationship, whatever the case is, again, Lord knows there are so many ways for us to suffer in life. Uh, but we can make a hard situation worse by defending against the pain, pushing it aside, shoving it down, numbing ourselves to it. That that doesn't go so well for us long term. It's only when we are true to our hearts that we can wholeheartedly pursue our heart's desires, whether that is more presence, deeper connection, more intimacy with our loved ones, or whether that is greater performance in our business, helping more people, taking on more clients, creating more products. Whatever the case is, we're going to be more available for what calls our hearts if we are honest with our hearts. So, look, grief is very difficult, and it's not something that I believe we're meant to work through alone. Uh, the good news is, I believe, we're never alone. We have the ever-present availability of God's support. Now, what a tragedy if you are not a believer, because you may very well experience yourself as being alone. Uh, I'll suggest, though, that you are not alone. And there's a way we can make this quite clear. If you are calling to mind some painful loss, again, a loved one, a relationship, a business, whatever the case is, the fantasy of the world that all of us thought we were living in and turns out, well, not anymore. Whatever the painful loss is, I encourage you to consider that you are not alone in this. At the very least, perhaps you can wrap your head around the fact that whatever it is you are dealing with, the earth has seen this before. However tragic this situation you find yourself in may be, you are almost certainly not the first one to have ever been through something like this. Now, taking that into consideration, it gives us a support. It means we do not have to hold this heavy burden alone. So, with that in mind, the idea that the earth has seen this before, if you want to begin to clear some space to work through some of this grief, you might direct your attention downward to where the supporting surface beneath of you is most clearly in your awareness. Now, maybe you notice your pelvis resting on the chair. Maybe you notice your feet resting on the floor. Whatever the case is, there is some grounding support available. It's a support that is afforded to you that maybe you haven't fully taken advantage of as of yet. So as you direct your attention downward, you may find that if you give this a few moments, with the supporting surface in your conscious attention, you may find that you're actually buoyed upward in a way. You're not hoisting yourself up into proper posture, so to speak, but you may find that there's a sense of levity, a sense of lightness, a sort of lift up and through you as you connect more intentionally with the earth's support beneath you. Again, whatever circumstances you find yourself in, the earth has almost certainly seen this before. So give some of that to the earth. There's no need for you to carry this alone. And I will often advise clients, whether we're engaged in emotional focused work or whether they're engaged in a psychedelic practice, I'll remind them that with the ground below and God above, you are in a perfect supported environment. You are in a support sandwich between two unfailing supports. So, although you may have a difficult time holding this and bearing this, the earth sure can, and God sure can. And boy, that is a tremendous relief when we find ourselves in the midst of grief. So perhaps you imagine yourself stretched large between these two supports. Maybe you find that between these two unfailing supports, there's more room for you to fill up with this feeling. When you bring to mind whatever it is that you've lost, again, a loved one, a relationship, a business, what have you, If you bring that to mind, give yourself the support and let yourself fill up with the feeling. Maybe you notice that those familiar bits of tension don't have such a grip on you. It's very common for people to defend against grief by binding it in a straitjacket of tension. They clench through the chest, they clench through the throat, they clench through the eyes, they clench. They're doing everything they can to hold themselves together. And look, with supports like this, I don't think you need to work so hard to hold yourself together. I'm willing to bet that with supports like that, you can hold much more than you could on your own. So again, I'll suggest that although it may seem that way, you are not alone with your grief. You've got God, or at the very least, if you're not a believer, you've got the ground. And boy, some people find that the more they connect with the support of the ground, the clearer it becomes that God's got them as well. I'll hold out that possibility for you at the very least. Makes a world of difference. So when you fill up with this feeling, what we're looking to do to work through unresolved grief is just clear a space for it. It asks for nothing more than our acknowledgement. So connect with the felt sense of this. In other words, what are the signals your body is giving you that let you know you're feeling grief? Now, as I mentioned before, grief tends to be a bit inward, it tends to be a bit downward, it has a weight to it. And maybe as you clear some space for this, with the supports available to you, maybe you find that that inward, downward heaviness is more apparent to you than it has been before. Maybe you find the means to encounter it more gracefully. Perhaps again, you recognize that you are not alone in carrying this. And then the question is, feeling what you feel in this way, free from the grip of tension in this way, what do you imagine this grief asks of you? And it's a strange sort of question. We're not very accustomed to thinking of emotions as having agency, but being able to ask something of us, maybe even demand something of us. It's not a common way to consider our emotional experience. But feeling the actual experience of grief, maybe it becomes more apparent to you what this asks. Maybe it asks for nothing more than your acknowledgement these few moments. Maybe it asks for expression in some way, tears, weeping, whatever the case may be. Maybe it asks for a more enduring recognition. And what I mean by that is that emotions, they let us know three things. They let us know what matters, in what way it matters, and to what degree it matters. So grief, as I mentioned before, it lets us know that we've lost something we value. Maybe we discover in feeling this grief that what we value is companionship. We've lost companionship. Maybe we discover that we've lost uh, a sense of home, a sense of belonging. Maybe we discover we've lost faith. Maybe we discover we've lost hope. Maybe we discover we've lost, whatever the case is. What I'll suggest is that one of the ways you can honor grief, one of the ways you can do right by that which you've lost, is by carrying forward whatever it is you've lost in a new and a more deliberate way in your life. Uh, for example, it became very apparent to me 2 years ago when I was homeless and heartbroken and suicidal that I could no longer afford to ignore or deny or numb myself to the pain of all that I had lost. I had lost painful, painful loss of companionship, partly of my own doing. I acknowledge that. I had lost stability. I had lost security. I had lost my sense of self. I had lost uh, belonging. I had lost hope. I had lost all of these things that I suggested to you that maybe you've lost too. Uh, I had to really painfully reckon with all of that loss. And when I came to terms with that, and when I could really acknowledge what it was that I had lost and how much it mattered to me by the intensity of this grief, uh, then it became much more available to pursue that wholeheartedly in the future. It became much more clear to me that security, home, belonging, faith, companionship, these things mattered deeply. And it's like my priorities shifted. My value hierarchy shifted quite a bit. And I could more intentionally pursue these things when I had come to terms with how much they mattered to me. And the pursuit became much more successful because I was no longer attempting to avoid. I was no longer playing the loss aversion game. I was giving everything I had to pursuing my heart's desires. Uh, because I learned in a very deep way that I could tolerate having lost everything. It was an agonizing experience that brought me right to the cusp of suicide, right to the cusp of death. And having lost everything, I discovered, huh, I don't have anything left to lose. And so the fear of loss that it's like I hadn't realized the extent to which the fear of losing things, losing anything more. I didn't know how tight a grip that had on me until I had come to terms with the pain of losing everything. And then, well, by God, I'm so much more available to pursue what I genuinely desire. I really hope the same for you. I hope it does not get to the breaking point that I got to. I hope you, by the grace of God, find yourself nowhere near that painful edge. But I do believe that if you can find support, both from the ground itself and from God, if you can find support and fill up with the feeling of grief, you will release so much heavy baggage that maybe you didn't realize had been weighing you down all this time. I do believe that in doing so, you're going to find it is much more available for you to connect with your loved ones from the heart. You're going to be you're going to be so much less afraid. Boy, I really hope that for you. I pray that you find that. You're going to be so much more available to pursue what you genuinely feel called to do, to pursue the assignment that God has ready for you. Um, and boy, I really hope that for you as well. My experience has been that on the other side of very painful grief, working through all of that unresolved grief, there's a satisfaction in life. There's a sweetness in life that I could not have imagined before coming to terms with that grief. So, boy, I wish nothing more than that for you. That sweetness, that satisfaction, that fulfillment. I hope you find it. I'll be praying for you along the way. And I do hope that the ideas in this video have been a blessing to you thus far. I hope they're a blessing to you and to your relations. I appreciate the investment of your attention, and I will look forward to speaking with you again very soon.